All right, this video is about moral development. So this was from the perspective of the main theorist in moral development is a guy by the name of Lawrence Kohlberg, and I have a picture of him on the next slide. But this was his story. This what you're seeing here is this was his little situation that he gave to people of a variety of ages, and then he asked them to respond to the question below, the first question: should the husband have taken the drug? So if you have not read this yet, I would suggest that you've already read it. The why part is the most important part, and that's what I'm going to be giving you some notes on. So first thing is that this is the guy, this is Lawrence Kohlberg. He studied moral development in the 1950s and 1960s. And from his research and from his studies that he did, he actually decided on stages. And so he felt that most people go through some basic stages of moral development. So he had three kind of broad category stages, and then within each category he had two sub-stages. Now, to my knowledge, as of right now, you do not need to know the sub-stages of Kohlberg's moral development. So we're just going to talk about the three kind of broad spectrum stages. So the first stage, according to Kohlberg, is this idea of pre-conventional morality. And pre-conventional morality, he said, happens before 9 years old. And he said at this point, the child is more focused on your own self-interest. So he said that at this stage in pre-conventional morality, that the child, their motivations are to either avoid punishment or to gain a reward. So for example, he would look at, he would say that, somebody, a child that responded to the Heinz scenario would say that, Heinz should not take the drug because he might get in trouble. He might go to jail. Or in the opposite viewpoint, he might say, a child that is in pre-conventional morality may say he should take the drug because all of his friends and family members will like him, okay, gaining a reward. Okay, so that's the idea behind pre-conventional morality. And remember that he said, Kohlberg said, lasts until about nine years old. All right, and the second stage is going to be conventional morality. And conventional morality, he said, is early adolescence. And this is the idea that you obey rules because they are rules. These can be either legal rules or they can be societal rules. This is what society says. So, for example, these people, individuals at this stage would basically view things as being very black or white, and there's not a whole lot of gray in the middle. So somebody in a conventional morality stage would say that Heinz should not have taken the drug because it's against the law. That would be their reasoning. Okay, so that's conventional morality. Post-conventional morality is late adolescence all the way through adulthood, and Kohlberg saw that when you're in this post-conventional morality, you start to judge actions on being right, and I put right in quotations because it's based on your own ethical principles. So what's right for one person may not be right for another person. The best example of post-conventional morality would be, for example, way back in the 1950s and 1960s, when we had the civil rights movement gain some headway. And up until that point, you had segregation, and so you had African Americans and whites that could not use the same restrooms, drinking fountains, or the same schools. They couldn't marry each other. That was the law, and a lot of people were in this conventional morality stage where they were saying that, yeah, that's the law, so yeah, we have to have segregation because that's the law. But once you move into this post-conventional morality stage, you start to recognize that, just because it's a law doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean the law is right. So in post-conventional morality, they start to recognize that there are, broader ethical principles. And you are, basing these ideas on your own sense of justice, basically. So somebody, for example, during the civil rights movement that protested, because they said this is wrong, this is morally wrong. I don't care what the law says. They are demonstrating post-conventional morality. All right, so these are the stages according to Lawrence Kohlberg. When we get to adolescence, we're going to talk about moral development a little bit differently because there is a different psychologist that looked at moral development, and she was actually a student of Kohlberg's, but she disagreed with Kohlberg. So when we talk about adolescence, we'll talk about her, and her name is Carol Gilligan. So this is kind of moral development phase 1. We'll get to phase 2 later. All right. The parenting styles obviously start with child development. That's why I have it in child development, but obviously it goes all the way through adolescence as well. So first thing is that parenting styles are kind of judged on 2 dimensions. So the first dimension is this idea of warmth and responsiveness. How warm and responsive, meaning, do your parents go and respond to you, when you talk to them about something, so how warm and responsive are they? And then the other dimension is how controlling or demanding are they? Okay, so warmth / the responsiveness and controlling / demanding. Okay, now the control, we don't necessarily mean, control doesn't have to be necessarily negative, but demanding, how much control over, what you do and say and that kind of a thing. Now, here's what I want you to do, and this is what I had everybody do in class, is that I want you to rate your parents, your mom and your dad, separately. Okay, mom and dad separately. If you're drawing this in your notebook, okay, rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 on each level. So warmth and responsiveness, I usually drew on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So keep going up. 5 is all the way up here. Controlling / demandingness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So rate them for each area. So where would you rate them for warm responsiveness? Where would you rate them for controlling / demandingness? And put a dot there. 1 dot for mom, 1 dot for dad. Now, after you do that, okay, here's the parenting styles that I wanted to talk about. So, first parenting style, that's what I said, rate your parents on each dimension. First parenting style is what we call authoritarian. Authoritarian parents have a very high degree of control, but they have very low warmth. These are the parents that, they lay down the law. This is the rules. These are what you will do. They're not the warm, fuzzy, touchy-feely kind of parent. So they are not the ones, they're not going to do a whole lot of hugging. Okay, they're not the ones that are going to talk you through things. They are the ones that are going to say, this is the way it is, accept it and move on. Okay, my husband's dad was an authoritarian parent. He was former military. He was in the military when my husband was growing up. But he was very strict. My husband and his sister had a bedtime all the way through high school. They had strict rules about when they came home after school, that they did their homework or they read. That was what they did. You did your homework or you read until both of them were done with their homework, and then but he was very controlling. Now, his mom was not necessarily like that, but because his dad was authoritarian, he kind of took control of those things. Now, the other side of things on this control side is authoritative parents. Authoritative parents have high degree of control, but they also have high warmth. So these are the touchy-feely parents, but they are also the ones that will also have some control. Okay, so these are the parents that, they'll talk to you about things. Okay, so these are the parents that if you do something wrong, okay, you get in trouble, they're going to sit you down and they're going to say, okay, what do you think you did wrong? Why did you do that? What do you think your punishment should be? And they'll talk you through it. And even though if you don't know what you did wrong, they'll talk you through, and they'll talk about what you did wrong. Why did why do I think maybe you did it because of this? Is that true? When they ask for suggestions on punishment, if you lowball it and say, oh, I think I should maybe not be able to watch TV tonight, that's my punishment, they will correct you if they need to. Okay, they have control. But they also have a high degree of warmth. My parents were authoritative parents. Got constantly, discussions about everything, about where, why they were doing these things and what they were doing. That was authoritative. Now, another type of parenting style is permissive. Permissive style, parents have very low control but very high warmth. These are the parents that they just want to be your friend. Okay, they will do things to try and get you to like them. They don't necessarily try and exert a whole lot of control over you. When I was in high school, I used to babysit two girls that the parents were divorced. And the mom, I think, developed a permissive style mostly because of the divorce, and she, felt bad for them that they got divorced, bad for the kids that her and her husband got divorced, and so she developed this permissive style. So, for example, when I was in high school, I used to babysit them in the summer. And sometimes the mom would come and take us places, could take us to the movies, take us to the pool. She'd, take us in the morning before I could drive. She'd do this. She'd take us in the morning and then come pick us up at her lunchtime and bring us back to the house, that kind of a thing. Well, there was one day, and we'd always work it out, days in advance when she would do this. There was one day, I still remember this day, there was one day that the youngest, and I can't remember exactly how old she was, but maybe she was 7, 8. The youngest wanted to go to the water slide, and she was telling me, I want to go to the water slide. And I said, well, I'm sorry, Jenna, we haven't worked it out with your mom. I said, maybe later in the week we can do that. And she's like, no, I want to go to the water slide today. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's going to work. And she insisted on calling her mom, despite my protests. And I'm, a teenager. What can I do? She calls her mom on the phone and yelling at her mom, I want to go to the water slide. I want to go to the water slide. Take me to the water slide now. Now, the mom was very indulgent, and she sat there and tried negotiating with her. Now, authoritative parent, my parent, probably would have told me, okay, we will be talking about this when I get home. It's not appropriate to talk about it now, and hung up on me. And then we really would have talked about it at home, and we would talked about why this was inappropriate and what I would get as a punishment. Now, this girl did not get punished. Her mom was basically trying to negotiate with her. And we did go to the water slide later, whereas my mother would have said, no water slide for this amount of time because you were rude. That's permissive. The last style is neglectful, and unfortunately this is low control, low warmth. These are the parents that don't care. Now, unfortunately, the other side of that family, that girl that wanted to go to the water slide, her dad, I felt, was kind of neglectful. There was times where after the divorce, I babysat specifically just for him. And I would go over to the house, and there was one specific time where I went over to the house, and I was supposed to feed the girls, and after he left, I looked in the cupboards, there was nothing to feed them with. He didn't have any food. I had to call my parents and ask them to get us McDonald's. And then he stayed out until 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And he had no sense of the fact that the girls wanted to spend time with their dad. So unfortunately, neglectful is obviously kind of the worst of the four. All right, so the last thing that I had students do in class was answering these discussion questions. There is an Effects of Parenting Styles article on Canvas that you need to read, and then you can answer these questions and turn them in to me when you're done. All right, well, that's it. Thanks for watching.